Arletta. Mr. Wise, is it fair to say that agencies that are responsible for procuring their own space tend to acquire more space per employee than when GSA procures space for other agencies? What do you think is the case?
Yes, in our review, Ranking Member Carson, we found that in most cases, almost all actually, the independent leasing independent leasing entities ended up acquiring almost twice as much as the recommended 150 square feet per employee that GSA now recommends.
In your mind, sir, should GSA be making greater use of purchase options to reduce the cost of housing federal employees?
Well, it's certainly a possibility. The way we view it, I think, is that purchase options could be one more tool in the GSA toolkit that would potentially enable the government to save money in acquiring space for its employees. And we've seen in our review, we found a few cases where that indeed had taken place, and there are a couple of more in the pipeline that could potentially save money. I think, as the chairman mentioned in his opening remarks, there was some significant savings for several properties over the past number of years. And so, yes, I think it could be an option. It could be useful for the government and could lead to some potential savings, assuming one analyzes the totality of the situation.
Thank you. Mr. Wisner, how long on average does GSA occupy a building where GSA is the sole lease tenant?
Where we're the sole lease tenant, on average, we are in the building between 26 and 27 years.
Okay. How do other governments, either local or foreign, handle long-term leasing?
My own personal information on these is Canada and Japan and London and England often own their federal facilities.
Okay. And thank you, sir. And lastly, Mr. Reeder, can you elaborate on how PBGC came to the conclusion as to why it was in their interest to have GSA take over their lease consolidation efforts?
As I mentioned earlier, we do think that they have the bench strength and the clear authority to negotiate a lease. Since we saw our lease ending in 2018, beginning in 2014, we began looking at all the options we had, various leasing options, and including a purchase option. And before making the decision to go to the GSA, we hired a space planner and architectural firm and began developing our program of requirements. We made the decision to go with GSA fairly recently, so we did it in consultation in our own building, as well as with OMB and as well as with GSA, and I think it's the right decision.
Lastly, really this time, Mr. Lapiana, would the Smithsonian lose anything by going through GSA to meet their leasing needs for office and warehouse space? And does the Smithsonian have the institutional knowledge to be an effective player in the commercial office real estate market?
If I can answer your second question first, we believe we do. And as Director Reeder noted in the rationale for why PBGC looks to GSA, at the Smithsonian, we do have the expertise. We do have the bench strength. We have diverse and unique, not just leases, but properties that we manage. And that for us, the most efficient and effective and responsive way to enter into leases or at least seek leases is internally with outside experts. We also rely on GSA as an important resource. As I mentioned in my testimony, we voluntarily report to the council because we know it's the best practice. And we're always open to discussing with GSA other opportunities that would make our leasing more efficient and cost effective.
Yes, sir. Thank you, gentlemen. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Chair Rankin.